The sun is really sunning right now, but honestly, we gotta film, so it might look pretty stark. I might be looking really pale. I feel like I look really pale. I always can tell better in editing, but it is what it is, and we gotta wrap up to go ahead and get into. So let's just go ahead and jump right on in. October, I think, was maybe my favorite reading month that I've had this year. I read amazing books across the board. I literally didn't read a single book this month that I didn't like. So I'm really excited to talk about them. Let's just go ahead and dive right in. So first up this month, I read Lot 62 by Nordica Knight. This one is book 2 in the From Nothing series and the second book in Devin and Maddox's story. Y'all know, if this is not your first video of me, if you've been watching some over the past couple months, then you know how obsessed I have been with Garen Parks and with these two, and this book did not disappoint me in the slightest. I, again, was a little trepidatious going into it because I'm like, the first book was pure magic for me. There was not a dull moment for me with these two characters, and I was really worried. I'm like, what if I go into book 2 and that kind of has dissipated a little bit? But let me tell you, every single time I picked up this book, I was so excited and so happy to be reading it again. The tension was still there anyways. So obviously, since this is book 2, I can't really give much of a synopsis of the plot for this one because you do have to read book 1 in order to read book 2. Motocross, hate to love, enemies to lovers, romance, and true hate to love. So Devin and Maddox, they have been raised by their fathers to hate each other. They have been rivals in the sport and also live in the same trailer park. Both of their family lives are not great, and they just really find a lot of joy beating the other up and racing and having that competition between the two of them. And it isn't until one night, and they truly hate each other, let me tell you, they really, really do. And it isn't until one night when Devin shows up at Maddox's trailer bleeding, stabbed, beat up from his father, that he's trying to find his older brother, who both their older brothers are best friends. And when neither of the brothers are there, Maddox is like, well, I'm not gonna leave you out here to die, come inside. And he takes care of him. And from that point on, their relationship starts to shift a little bit, but even when they start hooking up, they still absolutely hate each other. It's so good, and this book is just a continuation, and it was amazing. I have literally not a single complaint about this book. Amazing. These two are probably going to be my top book of the year. I love it so much. So let's keep on rolling. Then next up, I read Hawk by Jessie Hall, another book that I freaking loved. And it gave me, if you are an After fan, like I am, if that's where you started your romance book journey, let me tell you, this kind of gave me some After vibes a little bit. So this one follows Hawk and Nicole, but she goes by Cole, or he calls her Cole. Or no, he calls her something else. What does he call her? I don't know. Anyways, that's their names. Cole is living with her boyfriend in this house, and she is an aspiring writer. So she works from home too. And her boyfriend is very much well, I'm going out and I'm providing for us. I have this house for us. My family's rich. They're also very religious. And she just has never really quite felt like she fits in with this family. And their relationship is just very kind of stagnant. She's not really happy in it, but she also doesn't really know what else to do about it. So she's just kind of, in this relationship. And then all of a sudden one day this dude shows up to their house and he's going to start living with them. And she's like, excuse me. And turns out that her boyfriend invited Hawk to move in with them. He is fresh out of prison. She doesn't know why he was in prison, and he's going to start living with them. And she's like, you didn't even think to run this by me. And he's like, we owe it to him. This is actually his house. So he's kind of letting us stay here, whatever. And she's kind of I don't really know what's going on, but I don't really want this dude in our house. And Hawk just loves to kind of push her buttons. He sees that she's kind of this tight-laced, kind of innocent girl, and he's just you know what, it's gonna be a little fun uncovering what is truly lying under the surface that you're keeping so buried to keep up appearances from your boyfriend. So we'll warn you with this one, if you don't like cheating, don't read this one because there is cheating in it. I personally don't care because the boyfriend's trash, and also it's cheating in a book, so whatever. And I really enjoyed this one. I loved the progression of their relationship. I love the sneaking around. It just was a great book, and it gave me very much kind of Hardin and Tessa vibes, but a little bit less toxic, because Hawk is definitely not as mean as Hardin ever was. Okay, what do we have up next? Next we have Unveil by Elodie Hart, another new release that I was highly anticipating because Elodie Hart has quickly become one of my favorite authors that I started reading this year. This is the third book in the Alchemy series. However, you don't have to read book 1 and book 2 in order to jump into this one, even though I highly recommend the other two as well. But this one is Jen and Anton's story. So Jen is one of the owners of the Alchemy Club, which is, you know, a spicy club, and she works a lot with like onboarding new members and stuff, and she ends up getting contacted, or the club ends up getting contacted by this really wealthy billionaire Anton, who he is looking to find a new club, you know, to like explore in his free time. And when he shows up to do his interview, he instantly kind of like sets his sights on Jen, and Jen is immediately also interested in him. However, she just knows that she's like, if I just give him like the slightest bit of attention, like I'm gonna fall so hard so fast, and like I won't allow myself to do that, because like he's gonna be like a hit it and quit it kind of guy. That's like her assumption. And he very much right ahead is like, hey, I think we could have a lot of fun together, like let's see where things go. And she's like, nope, can't do it, whatever. So he just like really heavily pursues her, and he is not going to give up. He's sending her flowers. He's coming to the club whenever he knows that she's gonna be there. He's doing business propositions with their club, so that way they have to work together now too. It's just really fun. It's really hot. Elodie Hart's writing is just beautiful. It's like equally parts hot and like also very smart. It's just great to read. I really enjoyed these two. Belle and Rafe are still my favorite. They're from book 1, but I did really enjoy the like slow burn between these two, and that Jen really did put up a fight against his advances for a while. Really enjoyed it and would highly, highly, highly recommend. Lesson Learned by Layla Simon, a student teacher one, but truly here's the thing with this one. It is student teacher, however, it's not as like student teachery as some other books that I've read. And what I mean by that is like there's so much other stuff going on in this book that the student teacher aspect honestly kind of falls by the wayside a little bit, because there's just a lot of other things that these two are dealing with. So this one follows Paisley and Connor. So they actually meet one night out at a club. So in line to get into the club, they actually end up meeting each other, and Connor ends up paying for her admission in, and he immediately kind of hates her because she looks a lot like his ex-wife, and he has a lot of beef with his ex-wife. So he immediately is like, I'm gonna find this girl and then I'm gonna like mess with her for the rest of the night. And she does not know any of that, and he makes good on her promise. On his promise, he ends up finding her. They end up having like a little bit of a moment outside, and then all of a sudden she like passes out in his arms, and he's like, what the hell? Turns out that the bartender actually had drugged her drink. So then this dude goes feral and almost kills the bartender, and then ends up taking her back to his place and like kind of nursing her back to health, whatever. And then it's not until later that they find out that they're student teacher. Here's the thing, that there's so much else that goes into this. There's like some organized crime stuff. So here's the thing, this is actually book 3 in a series, and maybe I like am missing some context of it. So I think actually Connor's like, he's involved in like some shady business, and actually he's only a teacher at this school because his like brother or like boss put him in this position to like find out some information and stuff. And then there's also this like crazy other side plot line going on with Paisley's friend and her boyfriend, and him being like an absolute and complete psycho. There's a lot that goes into it. It's definitely dark. It's definitely a little messed up. So if you're just going into this for like a fun student teacher kind of like forbidden romance, this would not be the one that I'd say for that. However, if you want like a little bit of a twist on some certain things, a little bit darker, a little bit more fucked up, this was really fun and I really enjoyed it. Then, okay, I only added this one to my list because I read this book like 10 times, and that's my own book. I put it on here strictly because I'm like this, I added it to my Goodreads count, okay? Because I read it how many times, and I spent hours and hours and hours reading it. So in case if you missed it, I published a book this month. It's called Take You Down. It's a rock star, forced proximity. He falls first, kind of like reverse Grumpy Sunshine vibes. Yeah, I'll kind of leave it at that. If you want to pick it up, great. If not, I understand. But if you do, I hope that you like Walker and Scar even a fraction as much as I do. And I'm already working on book 2, so excited about that. Let's keep it on moving. Next up, I read Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. So I actually own this one. I just, quite frankly, I'm too lazy to go and get it right now. So this one is a fantasy romance. I think like an adult fantasy romance. Obviously it's got spice in it. And this one follows Violet, and it's like this world. Okay, let's see how well I can explain this book, because I always feel like I suck at explaining fantasy books. So there is this like world, and when you turn like 18 or whatever, you get to join a certain like job profession, and her mother, who is like the lieutenant or whatever, she's like, you're going to be a dragon rider. And Violet has always like thought that she was going to be a scribe, and she's very much like, I don't really want to go and ride dragons and like do all this like physical stuff, but her mom's like, you're gonna do it. So she ends up going to go enter into the Dragon Riders Academy, and when she arrives there, she has all, you know, like the kind of typical struggles of like being towards the end of the pack, people viewing her as weak, her being like a girl, and like people targeting her for that, people targeting her for who her mother is, and also that there was like a rebellion years ago, and all of these like rebels kids now are also in the same thing, and that is where she meets Xaden, who Violet's mom killed his dad, so he hates her, but then she also hates him because his dad killed her brother. So it's definitely enemies to lovers vibes. There's dragons in it that I honestly am going to be absolutely devastated because I love these dragons. And here's the thing, it's like a 5-book series. You're not convincing me that both of these dragons are making it all the way to the end of book 5. So I'm already preparing myself for emotional destruction. I personally really enjoyed this book. Here's the thing, it was slow for me. Fantasy books pretty much always are slow for me to get into. I feel like I need to wear sunglasses. I'm sorry. It's so bright. It's so bright. Oh my God. It was definitely slow for me to get into, but once I kind of like understood the world, I really, really enjoyed this one. Here's the thing. I, though, did think that it was like a little predictable. Am I mad about that? No, but a lot of the things that were like the big twists that everyone was like teasing at the end of like, oh, record your reaction reading the last page, I was like, I knew that was going to happen from like the second that this thing was talked about, like at the beginning of the book. So I don't know. I'm definitely like excited to keep going in it. I did really enjoy it. You know, I just don't think I like am like as obsessed over it as everyone else is, but it was still really good. So, and I'll be reading Iron Flame. Next up then for Smut Club this month, we read Tell Me What You Want by Lucia Franco, which y'all know. This is my girl, and this was great. I loved this. Still Off Balance. There's literally no book that I think could ever be written that is going to top Off Balance series for me, but I did really enjoy this one a lot. This one follows Reed and Vanessa, and it is a brother's best friend. Tiny bit of an age gap. Tiny. I think it's like a 10-year age gap. Maybe, is it a full 10 years? I don't know. Anyways, so Vanessa is an influencer, but she is also a cam girl, and she has her businesses that she is hustling for. And she always goes up to her and her brother's cabin. Both of their parents are dead, so they have like these properties that they kind of share between the two of them. And she always goes up to their family cabin to film this content. And when she arrives there one night, there is a man in there, and she's like, who is this? And is about to pepper spray him when then she recognizes that this is Reed, her brother's best friend. And they actually had a moment years ago, and he left after that, and she never really quite knew why. And you know, she's always had an attraction to him, and when they first see each other again, he's kind of like, okay, Vanessa's grown up, and like, I'm kind of into her, but once again, I can't cross that line. That's my brother, or that's my best friend's little sister. And here's the other thing, Reed just got out of prison as well, and he is staying up at the cabin, and her brother is lying to her like about him being up there and everything, and she's kind of like, why are you lying about this? But anyways, it ends up being their romance, and they definitely sneak around for a good while because they don't want the brother to find out. And you find out all of like the history about like why he left, why he went to prison, all this stuff, whatever. I just, what can I say? It was so hot. If there's one thing that Lucia Franco knows how to do, it's how to write some steam. So honestly, it was just a lot of fun. I enjoyed it, and I don't really have anything else to say. It was a good time, and I love the brother's best friend trope. I love it. The brother sucked though. Like I did not care about him. I was kind of like, you can just like go away because you're annoying me, and let me just enjoy these two having fun together. Don't kill the vibe. Okay, so then I have 2 more books this month. One of them was a new book and one of them was a reread. So the last new book that I read this month was Losers Part 2 by Harley LaRue. So for some reason, all of a sudden, I was like, I want to pick up Part 2 because I read Part 1 last year, loved it, but then I didn't like immediately jump. Actually, I don't think Part 2 was out when I read Part 1, but anyways, I just never got around to finishing it. And there was just something that washed over me that was all of a sudden like, I want to like finish this, and I did. And honestly, I loved this second book so much. I loved it more than the first one. Granted, the first one, really enjoyed it. I gave the first one 4 stars. This one, full 5 stars. Absolutely loved. So if you don't know the like premise, because obviously again it's a continuation, it's kind of like Lot 62, you need to read the first one because it's following the same people, but this one follows Jessica, Manson, Lucas, Vincent, and Jason. It's like a polyamorous situation, and the whole kind of premise of this series is that Jessica was like the popular girl back in high school, the 4 guys were like the losers, they always got picked on, the entire town kind of picks on them, and Jessica would like buy into that. And then in The Dare by Harley LaRue, it's a little novella, at a Halloween party, Jessica and Manson have a great night together, and she kind of like starts to give in to like kind of let go of some of the ideals of the town and start to just kind of give in to what she wants, and what she wants is Manson and his 3 friends. And then in Losers Part 1, they end up getting reconnected, but again, there's like some things happen, like some stuff with her car, but then she needs it to be fixed, and they're willing to fix it for her, but only if she will make a deal with them of kind of like being whatever they want her to be. We ended on a bit of a cliffhanger in part 1 with some stuff with Manson's dad coming back into the picture, and then part 2 is just kind of a continuation of all of that, so I can't really get into anything. But what I will say about this book that I truly loved so much is the found family aspect of it. Jessica has a family, she has parents, she has a sibling, but they like don't, or her mom, I shouldn't say that, her dad's like chill, whatever, but her mom is like, you need to like, you have an image to kind of maintain, like you have our family image to kind of maintain, whatever, you can't be like running off with these boys. And Jessica really finds a family in the 4 guys, and the 4 guys already, the 4 of them just love each other so much, and seeing them go to bat for one another time after time after time, and just seeing everyone messing with them for literally no reason other than that they're just like different from the rest of them. It just makes you want to root for them so hard. And just the dynamic that Jessica has with each one of them, and then the dynamic that the guys all have with each other. Oh, it's so good. Definitely my favorite was always like Jessica and Manson. Manson's my favorite dude. Really liked that, but then like Manson and Lucas's dynamic, Jason and Vincent's dynamic was great. Like all of them together. I just absolutely loved this. If I wouldn't have read Lot 62 this month, this would have been my favorite book. So anyways, really, really loved this. An amazing end to that duet, and I would read like a 3rd book about them all if I could. And lastly, a reread. I listened to Corrupt by Penelope Douglas. So I have been having a really hard time with audiobooks lately, just not being able to focus on them, and I was like, you know what, I need to try like maybe doing a reread of one. And I've been wanting to do a reread of the Devil's Night series for a long time, and it's like, it was October, you know, the vibes were there, so I downloaded Corrupt from my library, and I just loved this so much. So Devil's Night series, obviously one of my favorites. Corrupt was actually my least favorite book the first time that I read them, but this time around I actually think I loved it even more. I really appreciated Michael and Rika's relationship more, because I remember not really liking Michael that much. I always liked Rika, but Michael was always my least favorite of the guys. But this time around, like, I actually kind of understood him more, and that made me like their romance more. It's a 4-book series following 4 best friends called the 4 Horsemen, and they, back in high school, they kind of like ruled the roost, you know, they were like all on the basketball team, very wealthy, very popular, whatever, and every single year on Devil's Night, the night before Halloween, they would all get together and just kind of like wreak havoc around the town. And there was one Devil's Night then that something happened, and 3 of them ended up going to prison. And now years later in the present, the 3 guys are back out. Michael was the only one who didn't go to prison, and they all want revenge on the person that they think is responsible for sending them to prison, which is Rika. And Rika now, so she was always dating Michael's younger brother, but she just never really had eyes for Trevor. She always wanted Michael, but he never really showed her that he like wanted to choose her. Going to school in a new city, and when she ends up getting there, she lives in the same apartment building as Michael, and she has no idea that he and his friends have it out for her. And it's like a revenge, enemies to lover, or not really, like, yeah, kind of enemies to lovers. She never feels like he's an enemy until he starts like really fully messing with her. It's so good. I just feel like I did a really shoddy job of explaining that. But anyways, I loved it. Really enjoyed my reread. I'm already on to book 2, rereading that one. And these are just really like kickstarting audiobooks for me again. So anyways, that is all of the books that I read in October. Like I said, literally an amazing reading month for me. Not a single complaint. So anyways, that is it for today's video. I don't know what'll be up next week. You'll see it when you see it. So anyways, that's it for today's video, and I will see you when I see you.